Hey WordNerds! So today I want to talk to you about 5 common mistakes that newbie writers make, and I specifically chose these 5 because they're things that I really struggled with when I first started writing. So number 1 is a cliched beginning. A lot of people start chapter 1 when they first start off writing with the same sort of scenes. A big popular one is character wakes up in the morning. I see that all the time, whether I'm beta reading for somebody that's maybe newer in their writing journey, or for example, when I was the literary assistant at the literary agency, I ended up seeing a lot of openings like these. The character wakes up in the morning, maybe their alarm clock is buzzing, they get out of bed, and usually this goes straight to the mirror scene where they look at the mirror, and the author's using it as a way to describe what the character looks like. This isn't necessarily always bad. For example, Divergent has a scene in the mirror that shows you a little bit about the character, and it's not just explaining what she looks like, it's explaining a little bit about the different factions. Another really popular / cliche start of it is a chapter that opens with a character running through the woods. Usually it's dark, it's rainy, it's scary, they're running from God knows what. And the issue with this is that A, it's cliche, everyone does it, and B, as a reader, I'm not invested in the book yet, or the character. I don't really know the character, so I don't care if they end up getting eaten or killed or whatever by whatever is chasing them. And it's too vague to really get invested to, especially because I want you to hook me in the first chapter. So when I'm reading this and I don't know what is chasing the character or what they're running from, these are just a couple examples of the really, really overdone beginnings. If you can think of more cliched, overused openings to chapters, feel free to pop them in the comments below. Number 2 is over description. A lot of people in the narrative end up describing way too much of the setting, for example, or what the character looks like. And I was super guilty of this. When I wrote my first book ever, it literally had pages, I think 3 or 4 pages. Each time I would describe something, like the character walks into this new apartment and, oh my gosh, here's what the kitchen looks like. Here's what the living room looks like. Here's 10 pages description of what she's wearing. Oh my goodness, nobody cares, Erin. I had to go back and edit all of that once I realized thankfully I had someone read it and tell me, this is way too much. And it was when I first started realizing, oh, I need to pull back. And it was a little bit of a self-insert. It was outfits I wanted to wear. It was places I wanted to live in and scenes I thought would be really cool. And I had to sort of rein my enthusiasm back on that a little bit. And a lot of new writers are going to be the same. They're going to be a little over enthusiastic in describing things at first, and that's okay. When you've got a first draft, go for it. But when you read through again and do your edits, keep in mind that it might be something you do as a new writer and chop that description down. Number 3 is under describing. Of course, we've got over describing in number 2, and now number 3, I'm going to hit you with the opposite thing. So isn't that fun? We have to find a perfect balance between the two. Because as a newbie writer, it's often tempting to just run through the action scene or the dialogue or whatever's going on between the characters is a lot of times more interesting to us as writers. But when we go back and look at that, and the reader kind of gets the feeling that these characters or these events are happening in a blank white room. It's actually called white room syndrome, when you've got maybe 2 characters talking to each other or whatever is going on in that scene, and there's no description of anything around them. They could be standing in an empty space and we wouldn't know the difference. So whether you're using the 5 senses to let us know whether the character is smelling the home cooking on the stove, or they lean against the doorway, or they sit down in the couch and the couch springs are squeaky and she can hear that. Whatever it is that you use to describe the settings, there should be at least a few lines to give us a general feeling as readers of where the characters are situated and what's going on with the setting, essentially. But again, we go back to 2, and you have to find this great balance. So nobody said it was easy. Number 4 is getting a little too enthusiastic with dialogue tags, and I am super guilty of this still. I've been writing for what feels like forever, and I still get a little too enthusiastic with a dialogue tag, and I have to rein myself back in. I am very guilty of slipping in a whispered or a murmured or a growled or a muttered instead of said. And I'm not one of those people that's going to tell you that you can only use said and you're forbidden to use any other dialogue tags. I don't believe that. But I do think you have to have, again, with everything, a balance. So we shouldn't necessarily have a scene that's like, "Give that to me," Sarah cried. "No," Jessica screamed. "Stop it, both of you," Susan snapped. Welcome to a bunch of really white girls having a fight in this scene, I guess. So while you can get away with the odd creative dialogue tag here and there, be careful not to sprinkle too many of them in. Number 5, and one of the biggest problems that newbie writers have, is not giving their character enough agency. Your character should be driving the story forward. They should be making decisions that directly affect what happens in your plot. So this is a really good thing to keep in mind when you're first starting to plot your story out. Does my character have agency? Because this was something I was very much guilty of when I first started writing. Things happened to my characters and they reacted to them. And this is going to happen sometimes. It's inevitable that at some point something will happen that your character simply reacts to, but the decisions they make should push the main part of the story along. So that's it, the top 5 mistakes newbie writers make. There are lots more, I'm sure. If you can think of any, let us know in the comments below. I will probably do a part 2 of this video or an extension of it because it's just such a huge subject. There's so many mistakes we first make when we're starting out. Don't forget, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, the WordNerds have our live chats on Sundays, and we would love to see you there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.